Bungie announced a major restructuring that has some fascinating implications, and unfortunately, and most importantly, 222 additional layoffs. It could have been a lot higher, and we'll talk about that, but I also had no idea how big Bungie was. Like, the 220 roles is only 17% of their workforce, which at one point, I guess they were up to 1,300 employees, and I didn't understand where all that manpower went. This article actually does talk about that. There was originally going to be additional 155 roles cut, which is another 12% of the workforce, but they're actually going to be folded into SIE and be more closely integrated with PlayStation. This entire thing is especially frustrating because when Sony acquired Bungie, it was a very specific type of deal where they retained their independence, but out of the $3+ billion in the acquisition, 1.3 million of that was supposed to be earmarked specifically to retain staff. It has only been 2 years. There's a lot more to unpack about the further integration that Bungie is going to have with the rest of PlayStation, but that's going to be in a different video because there's a lot to go into there. This time I want to focus in on the layoffs because that sucks. It's the most important thing, and they do talk a little bit about why it happened. They give a lot of excuses as to why this is happening, but the main thing that feels the most relevant reason is that apparently they were working on a bunch of different incubation projects, and I guess they spread their workforce too thin. Only one of those projects seems to be viable, which I'll talk about in that other video I mentioned, but they're going to just focus in on Destiny and Marathon, which up to this point I was under the impression they were doing anyway, but they do seem to own up to the idea that this is happening because of poor management. Layoffs have been ravaging the video game industry like a plague over the last couple of years. Microsoft's just laid off thousands of employees. It's happening across the board, and I'm always reminded of this instance right here, where Nintendo CEO once halved his salary to prevent layoffs. I think a lot of times these layoffs are not nearly as necessary as a lot of these companies make it sound. It's just a matter of what they want to prioritize. Do they want to prioritize their labor force and retaining staff, or do they want to prioritize corporate profits and executive salaries?